The gas was already filling the apartment when police arrived. Someone had turned on the stove, placed a lit candle on the coffee table, and walked out the front door. The entire building was supposed to be gone by morning. Every surface, every fiber, every piece of evidence that could explain what had happened to the 21-year-old woman lying in the back bedroom, destroyed. It almost worked. The building was old. It had ventilation gaps that kept the gas from reaching the candle. An accident of architecture, a coincidence that meant the difference between a mystery that disappears and one that slowly, painfully comes into focus. Because what investigators found inside that apartment on Centinela Avenue was not a random act. It was not a crime of passion. It was not something that happened because someone lost control in a moment of anger. It was a contract, executed by a woman most people would never have looked at twice. And behind her, a doctor with a horse farm in Germany, a home in Beverly Hills, medical clinics across Southern California, and a habit of making his problems disappear. This is the full story of Juliana Redding, and why, to this day, nobody has ever been convicted of killing her. Juliana Redding was born on October 25, 1985 in Tucson, Arizona. Her mother, Patricia, has said publicly that she knew from the very first day that she had something special. Juliana shared her birthday with Picasso. Her mother called her a masterpiece. She grew up in a close, devout Catholic family in Tucson. Her father, Greg, worked as a pharmacist. Her younger brother, Patrick, grew up alongside her in a home built on structure, warmth, and high expectations. From the very beginning, Juliana stood out, not because she demanded attention, but because attention found her naturally. At daycare, kids gravitated toward her. Making friends was effortless. She had a quality that people noticed immediately and struggled to define. But here is the detail that stays with you when you read about Juliana Redding as a child. She collected business cards. She carried them in her great-grandfather's old black leather briefcase. She would tell anyone who would listen that she was going to be a businesswoman one day. She was 5 years old. Her grandmother used to take her to executive board meetings. And Juliana, a small girl in a room full of adults, sat completely at ease. That confidence was not performed. It was simply who she was. At South Point Catholic High School in Tucson, she played golf for 4 years. In her senior year, the team ranked first in the state. She ran track, played soccer, joined the recycling club, served on student council, performed in the drama club. In 2005, she was selected as a Tucson Symphony debutante, an honor that reflected the polished, purposeful young woman she was becoming. Her school advisor, Sister Helen Ralph, said she had a love of life that naturally spread to everyone around her. In 2005, Juliana graduated and moved to California. She enrolled at Santa Monica College to study communications. She signed with a modeling agency. She worked part-time, first as a hostess, then as a waitress, while landing modeling jobs, product shoots, and music video appearances. She was earning around $3,000 per booking. For a 20-year-old building from scratch, that was serious money. She had her own one-bedroom apartment on Centinela Avenue, close to the beach. She had earned her first film credit, a small role in an independent 2005 production called Kathy T. Not Big. But a start, and there was every reason to believe more was coming. Her friend Genevieve Stewart, who knew her at Santa Monica College, described Juliana as someone who moved through the world like she believed there was space in it for her. A quiet confidence, an unshakable sense of direction. Then, in early 2007, she met someone who changed everything. Dr. Munir Uwaydah was not easy to ignore. Lebanese-American, board-certified orthopedic surgeon, medical clinics across Southern California, a horse farm in Germany, real estate in Beverly Hills, a career built at Beirut, then New York, then Stanford, then Los Angeles. By the time Juliana crossed paths with him, he was a man of considerable wealth and considerably complicated business dealings. Uwaydah met Juliana while she was waitressing at a restaurant in Santa Monica in early 2007. He offered her a job as a medical assistant. The pay was exceptional, enough for her to afford a Range Rover. For a time, the relationship moved beyond professional. She moved into his Beverly Hills home. He gave her gifts and treated her generously. But there was something he had not told her. He was married. He had children. When Juliana's father, Greg Redding, found out, he was direct. He told his daughter to leave immediately. He believed the man was dangerous. Greg Redding's instincts about Munir Uwaydah would prove to be completely correct. He just didn't know yet exactly how right he was. Juliana listened to her father. She ended the relationship. She moved back into her Centinela Avenue apartment, returned to school, and kept building her career. From the outside, it looked like she had closed a chapter and moved forward. But she had done one thing that could not be undone. She had introduced her father to Uwaydah. And that single connection, a business introduction between a pharmacist from Arizona and a surgeon from Marina del Rey, would slowly become the reason she died. Greg Redding and Munir Uwaydah entered into business negotiations involving pharmaceutical pain creams. For a period of time, the deal appeared to be progressing. Money was moving, plans were forming. But the more Greg looked at Uwaydah's operation, the more uncomfortable he became. Something about it did not feel legitimate. On March 10, 2008, 5 days before Juliana was killed, Greg Redding formally withdrew from the deal, in writing. According to prosecutors, that decision did not sit well with Uwaydah, not at all. And that is where a second name enters this story, Kelly Soo Park. In court documents, Park was described in multiple ways. Uwaydah's real estate broker, his personal assistant, his financial manager. But there was something else. Something that prosecutors would spend years trying to put in front of a jury. Uwaydah himself reportedly called her his James Bond. Park was, according to the prosecution, his enforcer. When Uwaydah had problems, financial disputes, business partners who stepped out of line, people who needed to be reminded of what they owed, Park was the one dispatched to deal with it. Prosecutors would argue that this was not new behavior. Court filings described a documented pattern of Park and her boyfriend being hired to intimidate others connected to Uwaydah's network. Threats, physical confrontation, fear as a management tool. She was not the obvious choice for violence. She stood 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighed around 150 pounds. She did not look like muscle, which, according to prosecutors, was exactly why she was effective. People did not see her coming. 3 weeks before Juliana Redding was killed, Kelly Soo Park was paid $250,000. The prosecution's theory was straightforward. When Greg Redding pulled out of the business deal, Uwaydah sent Park to Juliana's apartment to send a message, not necessarily to kill her, to intimidate, to threaten, to make clear to her father, through his daughter, that there were consequences for walking away. But something went wrong that night. Things escalated, and Juliana Redding fought back. Saturday evening, March 15, 2008, Santa Monica, California. Juliana had spent time with friends the day before. She worked a shift. She came home. That evening, her on-again, off-again boyfriend, a surfer named John Gilmore, called her. She told him she was fine. He mentioned going out for beers with friends. She said okay. They hung up. That was the last time anyone spoke to Juliana Redding. At 9:53 in the evening, a neighbor reported hearing screams, loud movement, furniture being dragged or knocked over, and then silence. Police believe the killer entered just before 10 o'clock. What happened inside that apartment was not quick. Forensic analysis would later describe what occurred as a fight, a sustained, Brutal physical confrontation that moved through multiple rooms. Furniture displaced. Objects broken. Every surface recording what had happened. Juliana did not go quietly. Not at all. Her head was slammed against the floor with enough force to leave deep cranial injuries. Her throat was crushed. But the detail that investigators would return to, again and again, the detail that tells you everything about who Juliana Redding was in those final minutes, is this. Her own DNA was found beneath her own fingernails. She had been clawing at her throat, trying to pull her attacker's hands away. It is a desperate, instinctive act. Something a person does when they are being strangled, when the body is still fighting for oxygen, when survival instinct overrides everything else. She was fighting for her life with everything she had, to the very last moment. At some point during the attack, a call was placed from Juliana's phone to 911. It was cut off almost immediately. Someone grabbed the phone and ended it before it could connect. She tried. She came that close to getting help. After she was dead, the scene was staged. The gas stove was turned on. A decorative candle was left burning on the coffee table. The apartment was left to fill with gas. The plan was that by morning, the building would be destroyed and every trace of what happened would be gone. Then the killer walked out the front door. Juliana's body was not found until the following day, March 16th. Her mother, Patricia, had been trying to reach her. No response. After sustained silence, she contacted the Santa Monica Police Department. Officers were dispatched to Centinela Avenue. The moment they opened the front door, they were hit with the strong smell of natural gas filling the apartment. A candle flickered on the coffee table. The building did not explode. The structure was old. Ventilation gaps had kept the gas from accumulating at the concentration required to ignite. A difference of physics between a case that disappears entirely and one that can be investigated. In the back bedroom, they found her. Detectives from the Santa Monica Police Department began their work immediately. And almost instantly, something was obvious. There was DNA everywhere, not a trace here or there, not an incidental sample that could be explained away. Prosecutor Alan Jackson, who would later say that in 18 years of handling murder cases, he had never seen anything like it, documented what investigators found across that apartment. DNA on the lock of the front door, on a plate in the kitchen sink, on the knob of the gas stove, the one that had been turned on deliberately, on Juliana's cell phone, on the front and back of her t-shirt, and on her throat. Whoever had been in that apartment had left behind biological evidence on almost every surface they had touched, including the surface of the victim's neck. From an evidentiary standpoint, it was an extraordinary scene, the kind of physical record that prosecutors describe as a case that builds itself. The problem was that for 2 years, investigators did not know whose DNA it was. They tested 40 people connected to Juliana's life. 40, nothing matched. Leads dried up. Time passed. The case remained open. And then Detective Karen Thompson, who had been with the investigation from the very beginning, who had stayed with it through every dead end, made a connection. She connected the unknown DNA profile to Uwaydah's network. Investigators began working through his associates one by one. They collected a discarded cigarette butt from Kelly Soo Park. The DNA matched. Every sample, the door lock, the kitchen sink, the stove knob, the cell phone, the t-shirt, the throat, all of it. Kelly Soo Park. Kelly Soo Park was arrested on March 17, 2010, 2 years after Juliana Redding was killed. Bail was set at $3.5 million. Someone paid it. Prosecutors believed that someone was Uwaydah. 2 days after Park's arrest, Dr. Munir Uwaydah left the country. He was believed to have gone to Beirut. He had not been charged. He did not come back. The case moved forward, but without the man prosecutors believed had ordered it. The trial of Kelly Soo Park began in mid-2013 in Los Angeles. It drew significant attention. A young, beautiful victim, a female defendant, a Los Angeles setting, and in the background, a wealthy doctor who had fled to the other side of the world rather than face scrutiny in an American courtroom. The prosecution's case rested on the DNA. It was, by any standard, extraordinary evidence. Alan Jackson told the jury what the science had established. Park's biological material was present at the scene in a way that could not be explained by casual contact or coincidence. It told a story of sustained physical presence inside that apartment on the night Juliana died. Prosecutors argued that Park had been dispatched by Uwaydah to confront and intimidate Juliana, an extension of a business dispute with her father. That the encounter escalated beyond what was intended. That Park strangled Juliana with her bare hands, then staged the scene with the gas and the candle to erase what she had done. In the 18 months following Juliana's murder, more than $1 million was transferred to Park from Uwaydah's company. 3 weeks before the murder, she had received $250,000. Days before her arrest, members of her family received an additional payment of $113,400. The financial picture, the prosecution argued, was not the record of a real estate broker. It was the record of a payoff. But here is what the prosecution was not allowed to do. They could not tell the jury the full story they believed in. They could not argue in court that the killing had been ordered by Uwaydah. They could not present the broader picture of his alleged operations, the pattern of intimidation, the other incidents, the full architecture of what prosecutors believed Park had been doing on his behalf. What the jury saw was a forensic case, detailed, technical, heavy with biological evidence, but stripped of its context. The defense, led by attorney George Buehler, focused on one principle: reasonable doubt. Yes, the DNA was there. Yes, it matched. But DNA at a scene, he argued, did not by itself prove that Park was the killer. He challenged the physical plausibility. Could a woman of her size have overpowered Juliana alone? He challenged the motive, the timeline, the handling of the evidence. And he raised a question the prosecution struggled to answer cleanly. If Park had been sent to intimidate, not kill, how did the jury know the killing was premeditated, rather than the unintended result of a confrontation that spiraled? On June 4, 2013, the jury of 6 men and 6 women returned their verdict: not guilty of first-degree murder, not guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom did not stay quiet. Voices rose from the gallery. People shouted. Others were in tears. Park broke down. And Juliana Redding's family walked out of that courtroom without a conviction, without a clear answer, and without the justice they had been waiting 5 years to see. Some legal observers, including people who had followed the evidence closely, were surprised by the outcome. Even some experts connected to the defense, according to later reports, had not expected an acquittal given the volume of DNA evidence. Alan Jackson's words before the trial had seemed to promise a different result. 18 years of prosecuting cases. Never seen anything like it. It wasn't enough. Double jeopardy closed that door permanently. Kelly Soo Park cannot be tried again for Juliana Redding's murder. Whatever the evidence showed, whatever happened inside that apartment on Centinela Avenue on the night of March 15, 2008. That verdict is final. In 2015, both Park and Uwaydah were implicated in a separate, massive medical insurance fraud scheme involving approximately $150 million and 15 indictments. Park's bail in that case was set at $18.5 million. Uwaydah's medical license in California had already been placed on probation in 2010. The medical board finding he had allowed a physician's assistant to perform surgeries without supervision. By 2013, it was canceled entirely. As of the last confirmed reports, Uwaydah was believed to be living in Lebanon, free, with the family he never told Juliana about. Juliana Redding was buried on March 28, 2008 at St. Odelia's Church in Tucson, Arizona. Back home, surrounded by the people who had always loved her. She was 21 years old. She had a modeling career that was building, an acting career that was starting, a future that she had been drawing clearly since she was a small girl carrying business cards in her great-grandfather's briefcase. None of it happened. And here is the part of this case that sits heaviest, because it goes beyond Juliana specifically. The DNA worked. The science did exactly what forensic science is supposed to do. It identified someone. It placed them at the scene. It built a record of physical presence that investigators described as the most comprehensive they had ever seen. And it still was not enough to secure a conviction. This case lives in forensic and legal circles as one of the clearest examples of the gap between what evidence establishes and what a jury is required to believe beyond a reasonable doubt. That gap is real. It is structural. And it is the reason that in cases where the broader context, the motive, the network, the person who allegedly gave the order, cannot be presented to the jury, the evidence that remains, however overwhelming, sometimes cannot carry the weight alone. The Santa Monica Police Department has never closed this case. The file exists. The DNA profile exists. The evidence is still there. Somewhere it is still tied to her name. It was enough to point to someone. It was not enough to hold them accountable. And that is what stays with you about Juliana Redding. Not just what happened to her, but what the system that was supposed to answer for it was, and was not, built to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to specifically hear what you think about the decision to try Park without being able to present the full picture of Uwaydah's alleged operation. Because that prosecutorial constraint, that structural limitation, is what many legal observers believe cost this case its conviction. If this is your first time at the Crime 95, welcome. We go long because the cases deserve it. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.